Come on in. Hi, my name's Ted Carnes. I'd like to welcome you to the Stone Camp. And what you're about to see is an example of total off-grid living, practice of self-sufficiency, and zero waste. All my electricity here comes from the wind and the sun. And because we're up here on the mountain with no springs or no water source, no well, all of our utility water is filtered rainwater. I produce my own methane gas. I have a still to make alcohol fuel to power that will in the future power all my vehicles. We have a vast garden where we grow our food, an orchard, vineyard, and it's a lot of work, but it's very satisfying. So what you're looking at here is our southern exposure. So here's where we're going to get the energy from the sun. Up here you're looking at our six main solar panels, electric panels. Next to that is the solar hot water panel. And these tiny little panels up here are all wired together to trickle charge a battery bank. The four glass panels set at 30 degrees are the roof of the greenhouse. Now in the winter, because all the stonework in there is granite, that collects sufficient solar radiation to really keep the house somewhat warm. And it's interesting, you can walk down in there at midnight in the dead of winter when it's been very cold but the sun's been out, and you can feel in your bare feet that those stones are still radiating warmth. So what you're looking at here is a piece of industrial waste that we salvaged. And with this panel, I can direct any of my power sources, the wind, the sun, or an auxiliary generator, to any of my battery banks. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 large battery banks. They're generally always charged to full capacity, and I use about a third of one of them, which means I have a great storage of power, and if something breaks down, I have a period of time to fix it. Okay, so from here you can see some of the garden area. You can see the fruit trees, the kiwi vines, the blackberries, and off here in the distance is the freestanding sun pit greenhouse. It's not yet completed, but its function is to grow us salad greens all winter long. And when you keep in mind that, the Stone Camp here has been carved out in the harshest of conditions. We had no utilities, no water, no gas, no phone, no electricity, nothing. And we also had no soil. So what I did here was I brought a bigger bulldozer up and I excavated a large dry lake bed. I hauled 14 dump truck loads of topsoil plus 35 ton. Filled the lake up. Presto, I have a garden. This soil is as important to me as anything. You can see we grow all our potatoes, onions, lettuce, cabbage, strawberries, garlic, horseradish, whatever. Everything. So I want to explain, first of all, for legalities, that this system that I'm about to explain to you was put in the 1970s. This is a gray water treatment plant. Now, because of ordinances have changed, I doubt that I could get permission to do that. The reason is basically they assume that everybody is going to do a poor job of disposing of their sewage, so they make ordinance. they don't account for someone who wants to do a better job or a good job. Right? But what most houses, well, every house deals with gray water and black water. Black water is what goes down the toilet. Gray water is what goes down the sink, shower, dishwasher, whatever. So this gray water treatment plant has 11 filters. So when I turn the sink on, brush my teeth, that water travels through the first three are 75-gallon plastic tanks, vertical, that do different things with the water. They swirl it, they release it at the bottom, and then let it go out the top. Different ways to clarify the water. Now the next four filters are aggregate, which is basically stone. And one of the most efficient filters, aggregates, is lava rock. So my first aggregate filter is horizontal, and it has large chunks of lava rock. And this lava rock goes through, travels through chambers. And then it goes into the next three aggregate tanks that are filled with different grades of stone, and the last tank is with sand. And then it travels through three living pools, which are little fiberglass wading pools about this deep with different plants planted in them. So the gray water comes in one side, travels through the roots of the plants, goes into the next pool, travels, and the next, and then right now it's released in the center of a compost heap. But the way this system is designed, that in the event of a drought, those three living pools, they're done. Because I can go in there and take a shower, go to the end of the system, and see that no water comes out. The reason being that those plants suck that moisture out and transpire it. So if there is a drought, they're done. I tap into the last aggregate filter. I have in the back shed a whole series of filters, two series of filters, one for potable water, one for utility water. And the nice thing is, I live on a hill. So I can then take that water, send it through diatomaceous earth, charcoal, etc., sand filters, and then reuse it. So imagine, if there was no rain, I can reuse my water continuously, over and over again. So I explained what happens to the gray water. Now explain what happens to the toilet water, the black water. Right there. And it's hard to see. This is methane gas. This comes off of the septic tank. And the irony is, it's coming off the septic tank, but it is the cleanest burning gas. As some of you may have seen in RVs, they have what's called a propane refrigerator, which runs on a little flame the size of a candle. The methane I produce in here is slated to run a propane refrigerator. In other countries, they cook off of it. Even in Great Britain, China. Actually, I got the design for the digester itself from a Chinese methane digester. So what this is a big spherical tank, 375 gallons. It's plumbed anaerobically, which means no air. Then the effluent, so every time I flush my little 1-gallon Swedish toilet, the 1 gallon comes down into the methane digester. Then I have 1 gallon goes out. And that gallon then goes through a vast filtration system before it's released into the environment. What we have here is another of the form of natural refrigeration that I'm trying to develop. Well, this is already done and developed. This is what I call an underground airflow refrigeration system, and I got the idea up here on the mountain on the side of the hollow. In the winter time, there are 3 places where you can go up and you can feel the warm air coming out, or in the summertime it feels cool because it's a constant 50 degrees coming out of the earth through, I don't know if it's a cave or what, but so I'm sitting drinking coffee one morning and I got the idea that, well, I could do that myself, and the next thing I know I'm out here with a backhoe digging big, long, deep ditches. But what this is, how this works is, on up the mountain, you'll see a 4-inch PVC pipe with 2 90-degree angles. And if you take a stick of incense up there, you'll see that it's sucking the air in. Well, that pipe goes down 6 feet through big cooling chambers, comes into the side of this refrigerator here. Then there's a hole in the bottom where it goes straight down another 6 feet down the mountain through more chambers. Right now, this air is being directed into the basement. Yes, this down here is our little tiny basement where we store food. If I'm very quiet, you may be able to hear the slight hum of a fan. And here's the inlet where the cold air from underground is drawn into this room. So all the time, there 24 hours a day, there's a small fan drawing this cool air up from the ground. And I have the option to cool this basement or to air condition one small room in the house. So if, in the event of a real terrible hot spell, we can shut the doors of this little room above us and close this and redirect the cool air up in here. So the reason we store our food down here, of course, is because all of the insects that are in everything, that come out of your flour in the cupboard, the eggs are in cereal and all, but they won't hatch if it's under 70 degrees. So thus, everything is kept down here. We have our dried beans on the shelf. These are pears that I've dried from our trees. Back here we have our maple syrup. 2 years ago I made 85 gallons of wine. This is some here and remnants of that over there. We store candles down here and just, various things. All of our onions, all of our potatoes, all of our garlic come down. So my mentor, Ruth Scott, once told me that until economic principles mimic ecological principles, civilizations will rise and fall. And in nature, one of the most blatant ecological principles is that every leaf that dies, every tree that falls, everything that washes down a stream, every fish that dies, every end is given a beginning. Every end. There is no end in nature. So you got to ask yourself, what's the landfill? I would say it's an end with no beginning. And so that is the antithesis of an ecological principle. Something like 15, 16 years ago, I walked out of the house one time and I looked, a bird nest fell out of the tree, and I picked it up, I'm looking at it, oh my goodness, how soft this is, and what is this? And I pulled it out, and it was my hair. That's when it struck me. 14 years later, I was down to a cigarette butt. What do you do with a cigarette butt? So it took me 14 years to give every end a beginning. This is independent thinking. In this practice of zero waste, I tell you, you have to think for yourself. Your thought has to be original. And in this practice, and I call it a practice because it continuously changes. I ever find new uses for things, and then I change, and I think, well, this is pointless, let me do it this way. So what I practice, it's my spiritual practice, is zero waste. Now, it's just unique. Take, for instance, here. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 round tins. And in these tins, I have stored every synthesized man-made material I have ever come across. This is a wood composite. This is wood to vinyl. This is straight vinyl. Here we have a gold reflective material. And so this is my index. And in this system of zero waste, I have many indexes. Even caps, even bottle caps. I think there are 6 categories that bottle caps go into here. The old-fashioned ones, the beer caps, well, they're excellent reinforcement in concrete, so they get kept to themselves. I have an index of every lid, every type of lid that has ever come across any bottle that I've ever seen. And in these unique lids, I have had people drive up this hill, walk up with a cooler, an ice cooler, and it had a little plug on the bottom. You know, Ted, I lost this lid, you know. Is there any chance I pull out that big index, pour it out on a tray, search through? Here it is. I have never failed. Not only do I keep the circular samples, I also keep rectangular. Every kind of man-made material, plexiglass, that I've ever come across. This is some sort of fiber or plastic, just everything. And I've often come back here. I needed a 15 thousandths of an inch shim, or I needed to cut a gasket out of a material that, you know, resisted gasoline, or one that just resisted water. You know, I go in here and I find an oil impregnated cardboard or a wax impregnated cardboard, and I cut my gasket out of it. And it really, really comes in handy. Now, in the trash, the biggest things that you deal with, the bulk of it is styrofoam, of course, styrofoam cups, fruit trays, all that sort of thing. And you have to keep in mind that in this practice, the first rule is you must separate organic from synthetic materials. What that basically means is every piece of what most people call garbage is washed as clean as a dish. Not only as clean as a dish, sometimes if there's a Tupperware that had olives, or oil-cured olives, that gets the first dishwater. It's imperative that everything that comes back here is washed immaculately clean, and then I process it. So as I said, the bulk of the material is plastic, styrofoam, and you've seen the block, and I've insulated many of the walls of my house with McDonald's coffee cups run through a chipper. So there's an old saying that idle hands are the devil's workshop. He has no tools up here because this is intensive work. You know, it takes a lot of dedication, and oftentimes I'm discouraged when I hear about the large mass of plastic in the South Pacific. You know, it kind of depresses me, but I know we're going to come out of it. You know, we have to come out of it. We have to realize that industry needs to be made responsible for what they create from beginning to end. You take the tire. We face all these mosquito-borne epidemics. We got West Nile virus. I heard dengue fever is spreading like wildfire. And the funny thing is, and you think about it, if I hired 10 engineers and I said, okay, you guys go into your office, right? And we need you to design the most efficient mosquito breeder, right? I can pretty much guarantee they'd be in there for a week, batting their brains out, drawing things up, and they come out and they say, you know, we tried really hard, but we cannot surpass the abandoned tire. I mean, it's black, so it's solar heated, which makes incubation perfect. It's a perfect water catch basin, the way it's built. The water runs down the inner piece of the tire, drips into its reservoir. And a mosquito can fly around in there during a hurricane because it's wind protected. You know, and we may have been able to build one of those, but the fact that they're distributed evenly across the countryside in every stream and river, we can't top that. You know, I personally, I travel the mountains, hike all around, and the only mosquito breeding I have ever seen going on has been the cause of us. It's either from trees, hollow trees that have been cut by the timber companies, leaving a pool there, a stagnant pool, or it's an abandoned cup. Heck, I've even heard that mosquitoes can breed in a bottle cap. But really, actually, in nature, I don't see that much mosquito breeding going on. And so what I'm saying is, here I am with all these tires, my old tires. I can't get rid of them without paying a good price, which I do out of my pocket. But really the question is, who's responsible? I paid $250 for 3/8 of an inch wear on that tire. That's what I paid for. That's what I got out of it. I would say that Goodrich, Firestone, they should be responsible. And it's the same with refrigerators, appliances, plastic, everything. You know, they're saying right now that, that plastic is this generation's lead. You know, they use lead for everything, thinking, oh, wow, this is great. Let's make goblets out of it. Well, you know, hey, let's can our stuff for the Antarctic expedition in lead-lined cans. Well, they find the guys all dead, skin black, from ingesting lead. You know, we do these things, then we find out what a horror it is. Plastic is going to turn out to be our horror. And I'm not saying it's bad. I'm saying it has a property. It resists the entropy of nature. It doesn't rot. So for an underground cable sheath that goes across the ocean, for the communications, it's good. For long water lines, sewage lines, it's good. For plastic throwaway cups and bottles, it's bad. But I did it, you know. I did it. I labored over it. I obsessed over it. And I'm the one that climbed the mountain, you know. So I can say what the view is from up there. And I'll tell you what I see. And it may sound crazy to you. You know, we suffer, we've been suffering from racism and bigotry, you know. Hell, back from the beginning, you know. And I'll argue to the day I die that racism and bigotry has a taproot that feeds it. And I'll tell you where that taproot has sunk itself. It is in the landfill, right? It's disposability, the disposable mentality. So industry has influenced me that everything I look at, right? I go shopping, I go driving, everything I look at, the first thing I do is I categorize it. Does it serve me? Does it please me? Is it of use to me? Or is it useless? Is it a waste? It offends me. And what I'm saying is if I am taught to look at everything that way, from those two fundamental reference points, how the hell do you expect me to look at people differently? Right? It's impossible. The mind cannot serve two masters. It can either look with one fundamental reference point or two. Bigot, by got, means reference got from two. Right? Recycling is unigot. One always precedes two. It always is the basis. It is the foundation. So if instead that becomes my fundamental reference point, in other words, sure, that pleases me or that offends me. But if I recognize that it has a purpose, first and foremost, whether it does, whether it pleases me, whether it's of use to me, it has a purpose in life. And that's what recycling is. It's giving that end a beginning, every end a beginning. And if, what I'm basically saying is if we woke up, and I'm sure there is a legal argument for it, if we woke up to this blatant transgression of nature's law, of ecological principle, and we said, hey, industry, you don't make anything anymore unless you are responsible for it from beginning to end, then I would look at my refrigerator when it's broke down as not something to be cast away and gotten rid of. I would say, oh, it goes in, it's dismantled, and it has a new beginning. And I'm saying, if we woke up and we instituted zero waste, I guarantee that racism and bigotry would vanish. I don't guarantee the thoughts would disappear. I guarantee that that fundamental unigot perception would overcome the bigot perception. I know that's heavy, but I've been sitting up here for 36 years pondering it. I'd like to talk a little bit about patience. You know, it's a little more than a virtue. It's actually a way to get what you want. People often come up here and, you know, they ask me things about my lifestyle. Sometimes people come up here and they say, now I see how much I have to learn, and I say, no, you see how much you have to unlearn. And a big part of it is I've switched the equation. I tell people I've changed the equation. We have desires, things that we want, and there's things that need to be done. So you have desires and necessity. And all out in the world, we are highly influenced by the commercial industries, by corporations, to pursue desires. That's all TV commercials do from morning to night is tell us to pursue our desires. Well, I don't. I focus on necessity. I focus on what needs to be done. And I'm not saying I don't have desires. I have a lot of desires, but I can tell you stories that would just blow your mind. And so I focus on necessity, and I let God, whatever you want to call it, a higher power, always fulfills my desires, gives me exactly what I want. You take this candlestick here, for example. I'm an avid flea marketer, go to a lot of yard sales, because I heard that's the best way to support the economy, because the money doesn't instantly go to China. Usually people come to a flea market, they need money, you buy something off of them, they're going to buy food and whatever. It's for necessity. But one day at a yard sale, if you see this line right here, this looks like one piece, but it's actually two pieces. I found this piece at a yard sale, and I bought it for, I think, $5. It had a hole in the center. It was made for a lamp. And I got it home, and I thought, I'm never going to make a lamp out of it, but boy, it would make a nice candlestick. In 5 years, this is why I'm saying patience. 5 years later, I'm walking through the flea market, and a woman has her goods sprawled out on a blanket, and right down there amongst all her junk was this piece of marble for 50 cents. Matched perfectly, even to the grain. This piece had nothing to do with this piece. Now, I could have brought this home and said, I want to make a candlestick out of it, and spent the next 2 weeks carving something to match, and, I probably would have been unsatisfied with it. But I can't top this. And this came through patience.